Hi, I'm Carrie Zier, VP of eXp Luxury, and welcome to Luxury Legends and Leaders. It is my honor and pleasure to be here, and here we are on Thanksgiving week. I hope all of you are gearing up for a fabulous Thanksgiving, and I personally want to thank you for taking the time to log in today. And if you are not, of course, we will have it on YouTube and our dashboard at eXp Luxury to go back and rewatch. I've got two very, very special guests with me today. Ed Kaminsky and Joe Carteret I would like to welcome both of them into our live stream here. And thank you guys for joining us. We've got East Coast, West Coast here.
Woo-woo. Excited to be here.
Yeah,
happy Thanksgiving.
I know it. So, and thank you for taking the time for that. And hi, Kacie.
Hi.
You made an appearance as well. Great to see you. I know. So, today is all about, we're going to talk about commanding the listing and what that means. And I think before we jump into talking about the listings, because let's just face it, the dynamics have changed. Speaking really definitely in the US when it comes to really our conversations, marketing, selling these listings. So a recap of the market update, and, as a professional and really listing these, amazing luxury homes, I think it's so much value when we understand the market, and it's constantly evolving, as we know. And right now it has shifted. Definitely it's been shifting for really, if we look back at the stats, when you look at 2021, after COVID, it came out and it really went gangbusters that year because of all that, demand that, was held up through 2020. But then if you really go back and look at the charts, and I've looked at many agents, even the ones that are on the top of their game, they're still down anywhere from 30 to 50% compared to what they were. And honestly, it goes again with all of real estate. When I look at lenders, when I look at title, it affects the whole entire engine of real estate. So really today, as being part of our amazing luxury division, we get a lot of questions of how do I get those amazing listings, which all three of you have some great stories on that and some amazing listings. But it's more than getting the listing. It's how not to get it, how to service it, how to market it, and how to, of course, sell it and give our clients, the very best service they have. So let's just, get on into it. The fun part is winning the listing. And I say that's the fun part a lot. We've had to shift our mindset because years ago, I'm 20 years in the business. It was like, oh, how am I going to get that listing? Now to me, that is not the hard part of the game. It's really what those conversations and getting into it. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. We're going to start with, you can talk about the market a little bit of how maybe it has shifted a little since you've been in the business, because I know we've all had different amounts of years in it, but also once, right now, what is the temperature when you're winning that listing? Is it hard? What are you doing to get those? And of course, then we'll go into the servicing. Ed, if you want to open us up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to winning the listing, the one thing that I've learned over the years is when you're moving into the high end and you're moving into the luxury market, you have to understand your client a little bit better than I would say a traditional listing. And we have so many tools right now to learn more about the client, and who we're going to go speak to is the first thing that I work on. The second, of course, is knowing the market and knowing it inside out before I walk in that door. So I want to know what type of person I'm speaking to, what's their personality type, and we have access to LinkedIn and so many different things to understand more about who they are, how they think, how they work. And then walking into that presentation armed with everything that I can find out that I think is going to be relevant to pricing the property, marketing the property, and getting it sold, but also information I'm hoping that other agents don't do the time, take the time and do the research to discover. And so when I'm talking about every single sale that's happened in the marketplace, who the buyer was, who the seller was, why they bought it, where they were going, even if I wasn't involved, armed with that information puts me 1, 2, 3 steps above who my competition is. And I think that's critical today. And we have
And
access to
absolutely. I mean, that is to me step one. And Kacie, Joe, open it up to you. I know, Joe, you are in an actual listing of yours, I believe, right now. But when you prepare, what does the preparation, like Ed said, I mean, that to me, that is key. That is the way to beat out the competition is, knowing is having the most knowledge. But when we say that, what does that actually mean? How do you all do that? What is your prep throughout the week? And how do you stay on top of your game to actually have the knowledge when you have that listing?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Ed kind of talking about, luxury listings, sellers or buyers, they want intelligence. And it's not just about data. It's not about the market data, because all of us can bring that, right? And so I think at the end of the day, you're working with individuals. Let's use a business person as an example. They own big companies. Intelligence helps them move and make decisions within their day-to-day business life. They want the same thing at home. They want to know that the person that they are hiring to take on such a big job for them is able to go above and beyond just market stats and details of what's going on around them, but knowing every little angle that potentially may give them an advantage as they're coming to the market. Some people are scared, certainly, but at the end of the day, coming prepared with more than just your listing presentation and the marketing and that kind of thing, and being able to take them deeper into the intelligence side of what's going on in the market at very a micro level, I think sets you apart. For us, that's how we're getting ahead of things. That's how we are getting in the door. A lot of times, just being able to have that conversation remotely, that articulation gets you an invite. And so
Absolutely.
I think Ed named it spot on as far as going deeper with data.
I love it. Kacie, anything from you? I know you're landing some big mammoth ones on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I actually yesterday just closed one, but it was actually a luxury 2-year lease rental to rent to own option. And it was a high-end family that specializes in designing luxury cars in Miami, specifically for athletes. So such a niche thing, right? And essentially, the reason that I was able to land that client and represent both sides on it was going into that listing. I stressed to the seller, hey, we deal with people that sell yachts, luxury cars, all the things. And the person that we linked arms with on that listing was bringing in a luxury vehicle, a couple of them, to showcase that with our brokers opens, and being able to come in there and say, hey, these are our people. You can't just go in there, and even though we can offer marketing and all the amazing things that we do at the company, you also have to know the people that are in those spaces with high net worth individuals, like the cars, the yachts, even horses up here, down here is something that's pretty big. And so being able to showcase not just what you do, how you educate, and what you can provide from a marketing standpoint, but actually knowing and running, hand in hand with these other vendors that have those other clients that would like to live in these houses and also park their luxury cars and yachts. So that's how I got that client, and we closed just yesterday. So, I definitely think, knowing your people, knowing your vendors. And if you don't know people like that, get to know them, showcase and, offer to bring their luxury vehicles and their yachts to your different waterfront properties to bring in their clients and their net worth. Because when you can dip into those people's databases and offer it to do some type of a joint event, you're going to get so much more exposure and meet so many other more high net worth individuals to get eyeballs on your property.
I love that. Such great insights. As we shift in talking about more of the listing appointment itself, I mean, we love to say, I've got it, I'm ready. For years it was, what was your presentation? And, as we've all talked, I mean, the world with technology, it's all evolved. I mean, even what we have at eXp Luxury, I mean, what you can get from AI, what you can get, there's a lot of tools and resources, a lot of pitches out there when you go in. How would you all say, if you're speaking to our audience, on maybe a one thing that really works for you, something, that's different from the mainstream? We all talk about the listing presentation, and where I'm always standing is that value. When you provide value and that lifestyle experience, definitely when you're speaking in the luxury market, I think that is key. How are you all using that? Ed, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I think of a couple things as you're saying that. There's AI technology out there right now that can identify a buyer based on the description of the house. So putting that information into this technology, it can spit out who your profile buyer is, their age bracket, their income bracket, the type of employment they have. And when you can identify that and speak specifically to a seller with that data, and then move the marketing into that, because if you know how to utilize the tools to get into pay-per-click and those types of marketing, you can really fine tune your audience a lot easier than we could in the past. When I started 38 years ago, we used a newspaper and a 2-line ad, and it said, 5-bedroom, 7-bath home for sale, and that was it. But we can now really target a specific audience. And I think if you know who is the buyer for the home, and using AI technology to help you with that, you come across it being different and really knowing what you're talking about when you're sitting in front of a seller. And then the second part is storytelling, whether it's going to be about the house or things that you do or case studies that you've completed, and being able to create some color in the conversation with your clients about specific things that were effective of getting another home sold. I go into negotiation stories. I go into marketing strategies that I've used specific to other properties that I thought were really effective in either elevating the sales price, speeding up the sale. And I think that becomes very valuable in the presentations.
And I love what you said. And I really want, if somebody's out there really keen, wanting to take notes here and implement something, the storytelling is powerful. And how I see and why it's so powerful is it gives you your accolades without necessarily saying. One of the things I always says is, when I sold a $5 million property just like this, they too wanted to list it higher. But these were the obstacles we faced there, but this is what we did, and this were the results. So we told the story, but we still overcame our point of going through those, like you said, negotiations, the CMA.
Yeah, and I want to add something really important that you cannot miss and cannot skip. Yeah. How you present is so critical. Mm-hmm. Stopping and asking questions. Can you see how that may have been effective in raising the sales price, right? You have to re-engage them and get them responding to you, because if you start blabbing stories too long, they stop listening and they don't hear anything you say. So it's really critical on presentation. So not only do you have to have the stories, but you have to have the skill sets of how to sell, and practicing that skill. I find the agents that do that, however you're learning it, is a game changer. And skipping that, I think, is a big mistake.
So, Joe, Kacie, mistakes you've learned on these listing presentations, or wins that you've learned, like this works. You can go either way. We learned from both of them. Which, if you each want to take one.
I'll start. I'll say one thing that I learned was one of my clients he basically gave me an example of like an objection, which one of the objections was, what if somebody doesn't like this one, horse stable that we have, with the house. And he said, what's your objection to that? And I took that to heart of people just genuinely, either they don't ask you for the objections up front, or the sellers that want to know your objections, they're thinking it and they want to know, like, how are you going to brainstorm through these different obstacles that could come up in the sale of the property. And so I've actually taken that and I've now applied that into my listing presentations of, I'm going to make it my mission to bring up an objection, whether it's an expired listing that I've taken on, whether it's a new listing that's about to hit the market. I'm going to present, hey, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, these could be the objections that pop up when selling your property. I want you to know that as your agent, this is how I'm going to advocate. This is how I'm going to pivot with these objections. So you know how I'm going to navigate through this process to make sure, not number one, I'm getting you top dollar, but number two, I'm providing solutions that will win for both sides and get the deal done. Here they are. Here's what I think could come up on this property. And so when you provide value and when you provide solutions up front, because a lot of these guys, you know, they think these things, but they don't necessarily verbalize them to you as the agent, just hoping that you're going to know how to do it. And some of the objections that you might be thinking as the agent when you're selling these properties, the seller might not have even thought of that. And so I've taken that opportunity where a seller point blank asked me, well, what are you going to do if the client brings this up, right? And challenged me in the listing appointment. And I had to like give them an objection right on the spot and a solution to their objection and how I would handle it. And I thought, this is genius, because we're in such a culture where everyone they don't verbalize enough of what their expectations are of you. And when you can just go ahead and just lay it out on the table for them, it really provides peace and comfort in you as the agent. So that's something that I've taken with me now forever with my listing appointments.
I want to give some context to what Kacie just said, because it just happened to me this weekend. It was really beautiful how it happened. But I listed a home right near a high school. And I know homes have always sold for less being next to the high school. There's less parking. There's more traffic. You got Friday night lights and all these other things that come up. So as I was setting up for my broker's open house, we were doing some filming and the neighbor was outside. So I walked up to the neighbor to talk to them. And next to him was his son, who was 18 years old. I said, let me ask you a question. Because I believe in pouring into the objection, like pour into it. Don't hide from it. So I asked him, how did you like living next to the high school? He goes, I loved it. He goes, I could be late getting up and just pop into school. If I want to come home from lunch, I could do that. If I forgot something, I'd run home and get it. And he just mentioned like 10 things what he loved about living next to the high school. So now I'm using that, interview per se as a marketing tool for this particular property. So finding things that are positive about the objection, I think, is a good way to twist it.
That is genius. I know we were giving you some love in the chat somewhere out there, but I loved it. All right, Joe, you're sitting in a beautiful listing now, one of yours in Charlotte, I believe. Tell us yours, either something you've learned or something you won in getting listings like you're sitting in.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is all of them, Kacie and Ed hit it so nicely, is, they're hiring somebody that's full of solutions. They're not hiring somebody that has pretty pamphlets and brochures. It's important. Certainly, it's a ticket to the game, right? But at the end of the day, these people live busy lives. Many of them, this is the last thing that they want to have to deal with at the level that is going to be necessary to pull this all together and pull it off and get it to the market, get it sold, all that. So they want to know that it's not about hiring the person that may have the most sales in the area, that has the prettiest brochure. It's, hey, what is this person going to do for me? How are they going to be a pit bull with that negotiation process? How are they going to go out there and get creative? We had a similar situation recently, kind of like Ed and Kacie were talking about, where getting creative is what separated getting the house sold. We actually picked it up as an expired listing, and it was an HOA fee that was astronomical. Okay. And my client had a penthouse. So they had a double size unit compared to everyone else in the building. So naturally they picked up more of the cost. And so this property had set forever. And I went in there and I said, hey, what's the biggest piece of feedback that you've been given about this property that you felt was amiss? And kind of just put it on them, ask questions like Ed said. And it came out that, man, we pay so much in HOA, and people said that they wouldn't be comfortable with that. I said, well, was there any creative solutions? They said, no. Long story short, I said, well, why don't we come up with a time frame that you would feel comfortable paying the HOA fee on behalf of the buyer, and we take that into consideration when we're pricing things. And it's simple. And at the end of the day, it's to get it across the finish line. Here's a simple solution. And by the time it was paid, it wasn't going to end up being that much money, because I was able to actually net him more money in the way that we were going to get in front of it. So that's what they're looking for. And if that agent would have said that, they probably would have held on to the listing or got it extended. And so that's number one. I think all of them kind of hit on that about being solution oriented. But I think at the end of the day, you have to go in there and show that you are a hustler, show that you're going to be creative. They're looking for something different than everything they've heard. There's 20,000 agents in the Charlotte market. They could pick any of them, right? So how do you go in there and show this is why you're hiring me? And in my opinion, most important, it's because I take control and I run with the whole process.
You guys are all dropping bombs today. I love it. Lighting us up on our Thanksgiving week with all this information. If you're just joining us, we are talking about commanding the listing. And I have three of the best here that are just really pouring in and all the information and the experience that you are sharing. So we've gone through, and all these points, from knowledge, value, storytelling, objections. It does, a lot goes into that listing appointment. But at every listing appointment, we know what's going to come up, the pricing conversation. And I know there's so many different techniques with all of, I speak to a lot of top realtors, but let's dive into those, because some people believe this is the toughest part. Some just roll right through it with how they do it. And, there's different ways. Of course, knowledge goes a lot into this, but how do you initiate those? Do you let them bring it up? Do you bring it up? Is it part of your presentation? Because we know before you leave there, it's going to be discussed at a listing appointment. And then, of course, we did open up with the market. That is a lot that we're hearing right now when it definitely comes to this. But still, we are the experts, and I'm still seeing sellers still not getting exactly what's going on in the marketplace. And if we bring that up as an objection, sometimes it seems to put us in a weaker position. So how do you all navigate all that?
You're talking about pricing, correct?
Pricing, yes, the pricing conversation.
So to me, I lead with three things. One is really adapt the philosophy of being an advisor. Because a lot of times we get trapped into just trying to figure out how to get the listing and how not to let them get mad at us. And so we lean into whatever they're thinking. And we stop being an advisor and telling them the truth. And so the second you can get to a point in your business where winning the listing is less important than advising the client, you can elevate the truth, and the truth becomes understandable to the seller. And sometimes you lose, and sometimes they don't want to hear it, and you're going to be challenged with that. But I think that's the first step, and the biggest mistake most agents make. Second is really understanding value, right? Because a lot of times you're just like, how much are you thinking? Oh, I want $10 million. All right, let's try that. But have you really gone out and done the research? Do you understand what's happened with each and every sale? And steps to doing that is really getting to know the other listing agents and the transactions and having conversations with them, understand how many showings they had. Did they have a lot of offers, no offers? What did it actually sell at if it's pending? Having all that data is important. And then the third was today's conversation I'm having about understanding the gap between sellers' expectations and buyers' expectations. The gap has been very wide since 2022 and a half, and it's starting to decrease. And so you can look at that. I have sources to look at that data online. I use something called trend graphics and some other things like that, where I can see where sellers' expectations are, buyers' expectations, and that gap is thinning. And so helping them understand the realities of the market and why buyers are where they're at and why sellers are where they're at. And we've also heard the fact that more homes are being taken off the market this year than ever before. And being able to explain that, like why can a seller take their home off the market easier this year than any other year before? And it's because they have equity. They don't have financial challenges and they can choose not to sell. In other troubled markets, 2008, 9, and 10, when sellers weren't getting their price, they were buried in debt. They couldn't afford the payments. They had no option other than to just crush the price and let the buyers win. Today, they have a choice. And so sellers are fighting a little bit harder to get their price, even though they might be wrong. Or right now, because they can't get their price, they're just not willing to accept where market value is. So understanding all those nuances, being able to explain it to them, and being willing to walk away and advise the seller to not sell if they're just not going to go to the price it's going to cause it to sell. So when you have that power and that gift, it's easier to have those conversations.
So to follow up with that, and I'll let Kacie and Joe take these two other scenarios. One, they definitely want to overprice it, in which Ed has touched on that. The other scenario is you're coming in as the second or third agent. So both of those are very common in today's market. Who wants to go first?
I think.
Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, two things. I think, coming in second or third and it hasn't sold, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Ammunition. That actually helps me. And so I think that then goes back to intelligence, right? Like I'm going deeper than ever when I find that out, and I'm going to identify what held it up. I'm going to look at past pictures, past pricing, the days on market. I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to, in some cases, you may have comfortability to reach out to that agent and be like, look, hey, curious, you are going to sell this house. What happened, and get some feedback. And it may be that the seller just had crazy expectations and we decided to walk away, right? But all that is that intelligence that you're walking in with. You got to be a straight shooter. You got to call it like it is, like Ed was talking about. I have found that is the best options, and they end up respecting you because you are able to call them to the table. And in some of these cases, some of these people, they're eager for that because they're so used to everybody just giving them what they want or saying yes to them in business and things like that. So, having that person that the moment that they think is going to go one way, but you call them to the table and say, hey, well, here's reality. Do you want to hear it? It's refreshing. And so I think that's important. And then it just goes back lastly to asking questions. You got to find out their motivation, because what I feel and the way that I may want to set it up and present it or price it may not align with whatever their motivations are. It may be a rush. They may be getting a divorce. Like there's a million things that could be causing them to cut short. So you got to know that.
Yeah, I want to add to that because you had said something like someone really wants to overprice their listing. There's no one answer, because I've seen agents beat me out, take a listing overpriced, get a great price reduction, and it sells. Or I seen what I thought was overpriced and it sells because the market just found a buyer that was going to step up. And I've seen myself take those listings overpriced and then not sell. So they all happen, and it's a really game time decision. But I think the most important thing to do is, again, as an advisor, advising your client, share with them your opinion that it might be overpriced. We're going to take a strategy and say, hey, let's see if we can test the market and see if it agrees with where you want to go. And I've got your back, and we're gonna go for it because your home has this and it's unique. And you know what? There are no comps to support what you're thinking, but let's go for it and see what happens. And if it doesn't, here are our second strategy, right? This is strategy number 1 and 2 at this point in time, at 1 month in, at 3 months in, and this is what we can do. And so you line out what likely is going to be necessary, which is a price reduction, or taking it off the market, whatever it happens to be, and having that full conversation of the plan.
And I think that's key, Ed. What you said is having the strategy. If you have agreed, like, we're going to do this for whatever reason, and you pretty much know it's overpriced, is go ahead and agree to the strategy and really the timeline. It just makes life a lot easier on you as the agent, but also being that advisor to your seller. Okay, we've all had these re-energizing a stale listing. We've had it. It's ours. We are the first agent. We've done everything. We're marketing. We've had that. We've even, done a price reduction. These are the tough ones. How are we handling those? Because that's what a lot of agents in this market are seeing.
Well, I think, think about repositioning a property. I look at a couple things when I'm analyzing expired listings, but sometimes it's our own listings like we're being challenged with, right? And so you look at price, showing condition, and marketing. Those are the three things that are in your control. Everything else is out of your control if something's not selling. You can't control the market. You can't control the location. You can't control the floor plan. All the objections that you're getting, those are the only three things. So you have to look at price, showing condition, and marketing, and sit down like a brand new listing presentation with the seller and say, let's look at these three. And they're going to want to point at you at marketing. And why don't you take a full page out in the New York Times? It's only $100,000, and that'll bring our buyer. And we know that won't work. So, but there are things you can do to get it out there that doesn't cost you a fortune. So it's sitting down with a refresh look and what can you adjust, and you're likely going to need a price adjustment, but you've got to then look at what are you doing. Can you improve the photography? Can we just move the photos around? Can we showcase something a little bit differently? Can we push it out into social media a little bit differently? Reshoot a new video? Just something that we've learned in showing the property that might draw the attention. Obviously, there's all the things going back to doing a new broker's open house like it's fresh, reaching out to agents and picking up the phone of every agent that has sold a home in that price point in the last 90 days, because they're probably circling with someone else that's in that range and say, hey, I have a listing. You just sold one for 5.8 million. I have one for 6.2. It's a block away. Have you noticed it? Are you working with any buyers that are in there? And just pick up the phone and create that action, create that activity. Sitting back and doing nothing is going to create more of nothing typically. The second you become proactive, go back to the house, go visit the house, go see the seller, talk to the brokerage community, and just become connected with the property. Sometimes that in itself can create energy around the listing and activity and change everything.
I love that. And it's so true. I mean, first is to say, what could we do better? And it's not just the market, or it's just not everything else, but what can we? And I get asked a lot, I want you guys to really come in on this, is how often is it your price point that you decide that you are going to be present at the showing? Is it when the sellers ask you to be present for all showings? Because sometimes that is the condition. Or do you set your team up like that? Or are you personally there? How does that work with you actually being at the showings as the listing agent?
I think for me, just to throw out there, like for me, it's about understanding their expectations. Of course, that's number one, whatever your seller, because they may pointedly say, hey, nobody comes in the house without proof of funds, and you being there. And so of course, right. But I think you also want to think about the positives. I think so often people think, oh, that's going to be a pain in my schedule. But the reality is no one can sell that house in that moment better than who? The listing agent. And so being there and being able to really, at that point, I take over a showing. I step in for the buyer's agent, and they're okay with it because they're like, oh, this is easy for me because he's going to know all the information that I might get blindsided and not have, right? So I take over and I lean in and I lead that visit like I'm showing my personal property. Come see my home, right? And it's really, let me tell you all the wonderful things about it. But I always start in that moment up at the front of the house, and I find out more about them. I ask the buyer, hey, you know what? Before we get started, tell me a little bit about you folks. And I want to hear their story, because you will get a lot of answers, right? So I will hear their motivation. I'll find out their timeline by asking the right questions. And you can do it in a subtle way. You don't have to say, well, how quickly do you want to buy this house? You know, there's subtle ways that you can get it. And then I lead with that, right? And that's just going to give you the positive ammunition going into it. But I think the other thing is too, is you said it, Carrie, I just want to hit on, you said vulnerability. You have to take a step back and say, hey, have I done everything? What can I do differently, right? And that was just, you know, to the last point, but I did want to, you know, call you out on that. I think that's spot on about the vulnerability, about seeing and leaning into yourself to make sure you've done everything you could.
And, you know, and there's always a way to get better in my eyes, but when you are showing that seller that you are there, you're doing the marketing, you're following up on where all these ads are and what you're doing, I do think it goes a long way in keeping that listing. You know, they're seeing the work. And a lot of the times when I've coached agents and we really done what you just said, Joe, take a look on the inside and it's like, well, I could actually do that better. I know I've had listings before and I thought, okay, Carrie, I mean, you got to be there at this and do this. And there's, you know, do better with that, especially how we're servicing and navigating this market. Our last big topic, and then I know we want to answer it, open it up to questions from all of you that are out there, is the actual marketing. You know, and this is certainly not just a pitch for eXp Luxury, but although we love it, we're a part of it, but this is really, we love to educate and really mastermind with all agents in the luxury space out there. But of course, I do love with how we do have our marketing platform, but I know there are other ways to do it as well. So really, I mean, Ed, you're 30 years in the business. I know you've seen a lot of marketing and that's worked. Joe, you've got some amazing listings that you've really poured in and really used these tools. Of today, marketing has changed. When I look back 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the marketing game keeps upping, and now we've got AI out there. So I do see a lot of lifestyle. I see a lot of storytelling, but in all the busyness of what we can choose and pick out there, what do you see? How are you moving things in this market? And what are those, key tools?
Well, I think the first thing you have to look at is your personal objective with your marketing, because it's going to do one of three things. The marketing is going to do what your seller expects, which is to get the property sold, right? And we kind of lean into that. And then what we learn in reality is it's price and condition that gets it sold, less than marketing most of the time. Marketing also is marketing yourself, right? How are you looking to the public? How are you looking to grow your new client base and listing inventory? Because as a great listing agent, as a luxury agent, you tend to be focused on the listing side of the business, and you're trying to figure out how to grow that, because the more listings you have, the more understanding you have of the marketplace and buyers that are in the marketplace. You'll see the big luxury agents that take over a market and they've got dominance in the listings. They're getting all the calls. They know every buyer that's shopping. So the marketing has to be geared towards what you're saying to that marketplace to allow those new listings. And of course, it's a matter of retention of the listing, right? You need to be showing that you are doing enough and enough exposure that proves to the seller that they should retain you, even though it's not selling, because the cause of it to not sell is not your fault, because you've done such a dynamic job. And that comes from doing great marketing and great communication. So those are the three ways of looking at marketing. And then it's about being creative. I'll tell you, one thing I've always done when I travel is grab every piece of real estate marketing that I can find, and I take it home. And I look at it, because I find we all get trapped into the same type of marketing in our little marketplace, and we all copy each other. We all have the same graphic artists and they're copying each other. and then you go into a different market and you see something cool and different. So bringing those ideas and newness to the marketplace in what you're putting out there, I think is very effective.
I love that tip. And well, that shows of really getting out in the different communities, going to the conventions, getting out there and seeing what else is going on. And as you all know, we've got Kacie and Joe here, East Coast, Ed is West Coast. So we've got a lot of viewpoints from around the country. All right, Joe, Kacie, marketing, what are some, what's working? What are you doing different?
I think for me, it's, thinking outside the box, whether it's public facing or it's broker facing. We just had a bourbon, bubbly, and Botox event. And, most agents probably wouldn't go that route, or it's a little risque, or, selling sunset, whatever you want to call it. But we did. And you know what? It was a hit. And we got more people that showed up than RSVP'd. Usually you're worried, are the people going to show up, right? So we had a huge crowd. But we started by pausing, and we had a system. I give some thanks to Ed. Ed actually shared part of his marketing plan with me, kind of a checklist, and that was helpful. But the point there is you got to have a good team around you, and it's not just your team. You need to actually collaborate. And one of the things I love about the luxury division and the sports and entertainment now is that I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call Ed, or I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call Carrie and say, look, you guys are legends in the business. I have this at my disposal right here. Why would I not throw my ideas in your corner and tell you what I'm thinking, but also kind of ask some pointers for you? Look, I brought my highest listing I've ever had to the market, and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a single thing that I forgot. And so that's why I put that attention to it. I went above and beyond. And a lot of people think that costs money. It does, but don't forget to get creative there as well. Why are you not using your vendors? You should be leveraging. You show up for them, right? You're bringing clients to them. You're introducing these luxury contractors. Why would you not call them to the table when you need them to show up for you? And so there's ways to get creative, but it's all about thinking outside the box and tapping in to those around you like Ed and Carrie, Kacie, and others.
I love that so much. Amazing. Welcome back, Kacie. I know
you network.
I know you're en route, so we're just happy to have you on. We're going to end with you, and then we want to open up some questions. I know we have a few out there to be able to answer. You have done some really amazing marketing techniques. I love your ads. I love your social media presence. What would you say if you were talking to these agents and giving them advice on really marketing something different, changing it up?
Yeah. So for me, I feel the moment you stopped caring about what people think and you execute on your creative ideas and put that out there with videos, and paying for quality professional videos when you're posting is important. But you don't always have to pay for highest and best quality videos. As long as you're posting, you're being creative, classy, and tasteful, I think is very important. Keep people engaged. That's super important. But even for example, today, so I just drove from South Florida yesterday to here to Charlotte. So I'm in Joe's neck of the woods, and my game plan while I'm here is to film a video with Joe and talk about, the importance of leveraging each other, our listings, our network, and really just, using the agents around you that might be even more creative than you, great on camera, and leveraging us as a network, no matter if you're in North Carolina or in Florida, that those marketing techniques will make you such a well-rounded agent. And when you're posting on those platforms, some of the people that might be in Florida might have exposure, and, they might be inclined to move and be next to Joe here in Charlotte. So I think it's really important to leverage not just your market, but the people that are in your market, and the videos are super important, exactly what Joe and Ed said. But for me, the other thing that I've really done with marketing that's been very creative and helpful is I've paid a lot of money into nice flyers, direct mail, not EDMs, but direct mail, full page ads, front and back. And I have marketed and targeted very specific neighborhoods that are more luxury. and even the rental luxury space, because that's where a lot of people will have higher turnover in those luxury rentals and then want to buy something nicer and more long term. So those are two things that I'm very big on.
I love that. I mean, so much. I agree with the chat here. There's so much gold being dropped here. Okay, we have a few questions that we're going to try to get to in the next few minutes.
I see some I can tackle really quick there, and I'll share. So first of all, global clients that understand compensation. I think that comes down to the same conversations you have with your regular clients about compensation. I would say, if I'm going to give this a quick answer, know your answer. Well, here, we'll start with this. First of all, sitting down and explaining value. It's the biggest thing I pour into my team with is, do you know your value you're providing them so they understand that they're getting true value from you? Because this is like it's a new look, right? As real estate agents asking for compensation ahead of time. It's like it's like choosing an attorney. And if you ask for an agreement to hire you without going into the why, what makes you great, what you're going to do for them, what value you're providing, you're not going to get anywhere. Just asking them to sign a contract isn't going to work. Second, the second piece of that is you can kind of defend it very quickly and say, I'm going to ask you to pay compensation, but I'm going to write every offer and ask the seller to pay me the compensation so you don't have to. And if they don't agree to pay me, you don't have to buy the house. And it's simple. And that just kind of eliminates the objection. So that's what I use. But value is really key. Have you sold or tackled a unique historical property? I'm going to speak to something that could open up 1,000 questions, but I used to own a real estate auction company that sold luxury properties and historical properties across the country. And so when I saw that question, it's just where I go to. And I'm not saying you should go auction your property for every historical property, but the tools and techniques we used to attract the right buyers during the marketing process was key. And I think, again, understanding, and I'll give you an example of how historical this home was. This home was in Virginia. It was the oldest operating farm in the U.S. It had over 5,000 acres. The home was designed by Thomas Jefferson, the president, ex-president, dead president, I guess we'll call him. It was owned by the granddaughter of the couple who met on the Carpathia, which was the boat that saved the Titanic. So this thing was loaded with history. And so we just poured into everything that was historical about that house. We hired a PR company to go get massive press about it. And so we used the press because it was historical to get loud. And when you can get the PR company to get to the right person, you can end up on the news, front page of newspapers, things you could never pay for. Right? We were on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer one time, like the full front page. You can't buy that. That's a $500,000 page if you bought it. But use PR for that. So if it's truly historical and the press is interested, use that as a tool. And there was one more in here. Crypto. So when it comes to crypto, there are experts in every single marketplace that deal with crypto. Make sure you get to know the trusted ones, because there's probably crooks in every single market that also play in that circle. So be very, very careful. Make sure they're vetted. Make sure you advise your clients to seek legal advice from an attorney who knows that market. And you're dealing with a title company or escrow company that has closed many of those transactions safely, then you can move forward with that. But just to do that discovery mission in your specific market.
So true. Definitely. I've got two for Kacie. One, someone asked, do you farm a luxury neighborhood, which you send mailers to? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So if you go to MLS, what I do, and maybe it sounds really easy, but essentially what I've always done, and there might be a better option out there, is I just go into my MLS and I look at the luxury homes. And for us, if you're looking at a price point of $10,000 a month or more, that's typically more of a luxury market. And it can go anywhere from $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month in rentals. And what you can do is you can look at the dates of when they close. So maybe they closed 8 months, 9 months ago. You know that they may be coming up on either renewal, or they might be, kind of in that space of, man, do I really want to spend $10,000 to $100,000 a month on this property, or should I just go ahead and pull the trigger and buy my own property and invest myself? And so I look at the properties that have closed in those areas, and we'll either directly target the entire neighborhood, or we'll target that zip code, or we even send direct mail to those renters that have closed. And so the luxury rental market, we are looking for buyers, right? We're looking for sellers, all of it. And so it just depends on what type of clientele we're targeting. Are we targeting buyers? Are we targeting sellers? And so if I'm targeting and I want a right now ready buyer, I'm looking at that time frame between that 8 to 10 months of that rental that closed, and then I'm going to target that person in that neighborhood and showcase other luxury listings that we have that I know if they got a mortgage on it, or if they're paying cash, jumbo loan, whatever, I know that, okay, they're going to fall in this parameter because I know that they can afford this type of home based off of what they're paying and what they rented. That makes sense. I have an incredible girl that does all my mailers, and we specifically do the direct mail with their name on it. And, it works so much better than just a general EDDM. And I pay the extra, 36 cents a page to just do the full, 8.5 by 11 front and back, rather than just the tiny one that's thrown out. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Awesome information, all of you. We've got somebody that said, would love to see you guys do some, more firsthand approach. Yes, that would be a great luxury legends and leaders where we actually talk about what we actually say and mimic back and forth. So would love to do that. What is the AI information? Ed, can you give us more details on the AI for the buyers research?
Yes. Can I send it to you after the call and we can get it out to them? Because
Yes, absolutely.
I'd have to look on my.
Yeah, what we can do is come back in and we can repost it in this chat. How's that? And then we'll be able to get it out and answer it. Yeah, that's a great question. And definitely there's so much of that. Joe, I know you're there in your listing. Is this the first listing that we listed through Sports and Entertainment?
It is. This is the very first since we launched the division. So super excited about that. It's a beautiful home, 5.8 million on Lake Norman, which is just north of the city of Charlotte. It's in Mooresville, North Carolina. And it is a NBA player who has traded to Dallas, and very fortunate and grateful for the opportunity.
Yes. Well, that's what our luxury community is all about. And I just truly want to thank everyone for tuning in today and just pouring into not only luxury, but our community, and really being that advisor as all of these amazing agents and advisories and counsel have really come in to pour into you for. So again, thank you. I hope everyone has a fabulous Thanksgiving, and we hope to see you next time on Luxury Legends and Leaders.